everybody, it's Jamie Humphries here for Six String Alliance, and we are on location today. We are in Weilberg, I think that's how you say it, and we're at Henning's house. We're at 42 Gear Street 3, and I'm incredibly excited to be here this year. I basically was picked to come last year during the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I really felt that Henning was kind of scraping the bottom of the buckets of YouTubers and found my rather small channel there. No, he was incredibly gracious, invited me along. And since then, you know, friendships, relationships have developed, and here I am again. So I'm incredibly excited to be here, catching up with some friends, some new friends, making lots of new friends from some of the bigger channels that have come over from the States and from Canada, and also reconnecting with some of the manufacturers that I met last year. And this happened. Yes. How do I feel about this? How do you feel about this? We're all used to seeing me playing an Ernie Ball Music Man, and I don't need to tell you how much of a fan of Ernie Ball Music Man I am, but I'm also a fan of all things Eddie Van Halen. So I was hanging out with some buddies of mine from Boutique Amp Distribution, and the guys from Face who distribute these guitars, the Peaveys, and also my good friends at Line 6. I've had a long relationship with Line 6, and the guys over at Yamaha have really supported the channel. And we got talking and kind of thought, well, why don't we try and look at some Van Halen-esque tones? Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer on this video. For all of you that start hating on me, it sounds nothing like it. We've had literally 10 minutes to set this up, and we already planned to do something a little bit more full on in my studio at a later time. But we just thought it would be a bit of fun. We got the guitars here. We got this beautiful amp here. So we thought we'd put a few pieces of equipment together. Now, obviously the history, we all know the history of Eddie playing the Frankenstrat that he built, moving it over to playing Kramer guitars, and eventually moving over to Ernie Ball Music Man. He was with Ernie Ball Music Man for a number of years, and then he went to Peavey, was with Peavey for a number of years, and then ultimately set up his own brand. But we have this Peavey HP. Now, I can't remember which, if it's the HP2 maybe. I don't think it really matters. It's basically a Peavey Wolfgang. It's a new old stock guitar. I'm not too sure of the specs. I've just enjoyed playing this guitar. One of the things I love about this guitar is the carved top. If I can just sort of angle that, you can see the carved top. All of the Ernie Ball Music Mans are like a slab flat top on them, but this is absolutely fantastic. The pickup switch is a little bit more logical on this one than it was on the original Peavey Wolfgang, where that way round was the bridge pickup and that way round was the neck pickup. That's always been Eddie's sort of favoured switching. So yeah, I kind of I've never really used a Peavey Wolfgang, and I must admit the ones that I played before were the sort of lower end of the of the spectrum, if you like, and I was never really that set alight with them. But I saw this guitar here and I was like, that's a little bit rude. I better pick that up, and I've really enjoyed playing this. So we've taken this Peavey. Like I said, this isn't called the Wolfgang anymore, but it's obviously very much based on the Wolfgang. What are we using for amplifier? Right, well, we are going into the Soldano. Now, obviously, Eddie used his Marshalls originally, and then I believe that the original Marshall was actually serviced or worked on by Mike Soldano, and then Mike Soldano started making amps for Ed. And there are those pictures of him, I think, playing at a NAMM show where he's got, I think, a striped one. I know there's a lot of documented photos of him using them, and obviously, you know, there's a little bit of a grey area in terms of when he developed the 5150 amp of. It was basically a Soldano. So this is kind of the real deal. Now, what we've got here is an SLO30. This is a 6L6 amplifier. It's pretty much the same as its big brother, but it has, obviously, it's a slightly smaller chassis and maybe a little bit more portable for you guys if you're looking for slightly, not quite a bulky amp. And but it has a smaller output transformer, so it's slightly lower wattage, but it is essentially the same as its big brother. I'm going to turn off the effects here. We're going to talk about effects in the moment. So I'm on the overdrive channel, and you can crunch up the clean channel really nicely. We were experimenting with that. So let's just have a listen to the core tone that I've got from the guitar and the amplifier. Now that's a fantastic sound. It's got loads of girth. It's got loads of weight. The other thing as well with this combination of guitar and amplifier, you know, if you're going to play that kind of Van Halen-esque style, you know, it was all about using the guitar controls, you know, like being able to cleans up ridiculously. Okay, so a big part of Eddie's sound during this period, he started to develop a wet, dry, wet setup during the 1980s and was using the Eventide. He was using the old Eventide harmonizers. I use one of those, a plug-in version of that in my studio when I'm from my UAD, when I'm kind of replicating the Van Halen tone. It's a big part of the sound. But another big part of the sound was the fact that he'd use his Marshall, he'd use H&H power amps, and he'd run a wet, dry, wet setup. Now, I'm a massive fan of wet, dry, wet setups. I've had the honor and the privilege of standing on stage for many nights on tour in the Brian May Band with Brian back 10 years ago and hearing his incredibly majestic sounding wet, dry, wet rig. And I was always running stereo setups, and I wanted to find a way of utilizing modern technology and classic technology to produce a wet, dry, wet rig. Now, we are using up the back there, yeah, you can just about see it. We are using a Captor X, and I use Captor X pretty much exclusively for live. And the way I run them is I run it in dual mono mode. So one output is completely dry. The other output goes into my effects. So I'm sending an emulated signal into my effects, and I split that signal out in stereo, and that's 100% wet. So we have wet, dry, wet on the mixing board, and that's how I achieve it silently. Let's talk about effects. Now, I have used Line 6 effects forever. I've been using Line 6 equipment since its launch in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I was dragged kicking and screaming a bit into modeling. And I have a pod at home. I have a couple of pods, actually. I have a pod, a Chrome pod that Line 6 gave to me many years ago, and I have a Rack Pod XT Pro that I used when I was on tour with the Australian Pink Floyd show. I used it for the lap steel side of my rig. So I actually love those pieces of equipment. I know it's very much old technology. And in recent times, I've been experimenting using the Helix, namely the HX effects, and also using Helix Native. In my live rack, I still use the old Line 6 Mod Pro and Echo Pro. I have them in my live rack and my studio rack. Those pieces of equipment for me are incredible. Although I'm looking to now swap over fully to Helix, and I'm becoming more and more of a fan of the new technology. Worked on a video with John Brown yesterday using the Helix and the Synergy system. So what do we have today? We have the HX Stomp XL. Now, this is an updated version of the incredibly popular HX Stomp, which was a slightly smaller, more space-saving, real estate-saving version of the popular Helix on your pedal board. But we have a little bit of extra functionality. You can now include 8 blocks into your signal chain. And obviously, with the Helix technology, you can go crazy with your routing. Now, we've had not much time to get this set up. We were going to go 4 cable. I've just decided to put things in the effects send and return of the amp. So a big part of Eddie's tone is going to be, or that 90s tone, is the wet, dry, wet. We're not able to reproduce that here now. So obviously there's a slight compromise. So as I said, my disclaimer, this is a stylistic appropriation. We could obviously get this with more time. We could get this a lot better. So a big part of his sound is going to be the pitch shift. So what we've done here, we've programmed up a pitch shifter. I've just engaged that. We've got the dual pitch set, and we've gone just plus 5 cent on the pitch, which gives us this beautiful chorusing sound. You can really hear that it has a different sound to chorusing, I think. If I drop the level of the guitar, you can really hear that kind of tone. It's different to chorusing. I very much prefer the effect of this dual pitch, and I especially love the separation that you get when you run it wet, dry, wet. And everybody kind of goes for the eventide thing. That's the known effect for this sound. But I have to say that this HX Stomp XL, this does it absolutely fantastically. You know, a cost-effective a box that has so many other features to it, but also does that effect. So we have the dual pitch. What else do we need? Now, Eddie was not shy of a bit of delay. He ran, I believe it was the SD3000s. He ran various different delay units. I've actually seen a picture of his rack. I believe it was a Dave Friedman built rack that actually had a Line 6 Echo Pro in it as well. So we've put a delay on here. So let's add the delay. So in terms of our signal chain, we've gone dual pitch and we've got the delay as well. So great tone. That is an absolutely fantastic guitar sound. Like I said, we could really go to town with this. I'm just trying to, you know, show you the capabilities of trying to achieve a tone with this, which is, you know, it's not cost effective particularly. We're not exactly using a budget amplifier or budget guitar. And, but also the fact that we're not having to have a massive rack of effects to do this. There is the capabilities of running the HX Stomp in a 4-cable method, so you could put your flangers and whatnot in the front end, and also you can even run them wet, dry, wet. As I said, this is how I like to run mine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to mute out the guitar. I'm going to swap guitars because I have another Peavey guitar here. We have this blue one. I'm a bit spoiled. That matches the speaker cabinet. That looks nice. So what we've also done here is we've added a flanger effect. And this also played a big part of that sort of 90s sound when it came to the Van Halen tone. I've got this guitar set to drop D. Let's have a listen to the flanger engaged. This sounds really cool. I love it. I love this rig. This is great. So, like I said, a bit more tweaking, we could have really got this close. There's a lot of flexibility that you can achieve by adding these effects. There are so many effects in this unit, and it integrates so well with an amplifier. You know, I'm not noticing any tonal coloration at all. As I said, you know, we're dialing this in we've had literally 10 minutes to set this up, you know, straight into the amp, rig up the effects unit. So, you know, like I said, before I get comments of, oh, it doesn't sound like this, and I'm trying to change on the fly a little bit, but we will do something a bit more involved with this. But that flanger as well, when I put that setting on there, when we add the flanger in the chain and I'm playing that riff, that's a... You know, that's the tone, that's the sound. You know, his sound really was that affected. And if we ran this in a wet, dry, wet wiring scenario, we'd get a lot more definition and a lot more width and spread. I'd love to hear this up in stereo. Okay, so there you go, guys. Just to give you, you know, like I said, a little bit of a a taster of some of the equipment. This has actually been some highlight equipment for me here at the show. I've only been here a day so far, so there's going to be more content to come. It's a great rig. You know, we got the Peaveys, the HPs running into this. This amp is a naughty amplifier. I am loving this amp. The Soldano amp is, the SLO is said to be the greatest rock guitar amp ever made. And this is a fantastic sounding amplifier. That is modern Eddie in a box. And then we just team that up with the Line 6 HX Stomp, a nice compact, and it's really well made as well, this. I love the steel casing on it. It doesn't feel like if you're stomping on that unit night after night on a gig that it's going to fall apart. That is a really great effects unit. Really powerful for its size and an absolute multitude of different effects. I'm so pleased to find that dual pitch D tune in there. That's something that I've been looking for ages without having to sell one of my kidneys for a vintage Eventide unit. So yeah, stay tuned for more of that from me. You're going to see a Helix loaded into my my big rack back in the studio very, very soon. All right, guys, thank you so much. If you would like to follow more content we're making here, there's some great guys, other YouTubers here and myself. Follow the hashtag 42GearStreet3. A massive shout out to Henning Pauly for putting this event on, and for his lovely partner Leslie, who's running around with coffee and making us feel welcome. And I've got to give a massive shout out to Henning's mum. What a lovely lady. As I'm strict keto, I avoid any kind of bread. Every day she calls me up to the little house and she makes me omelettes. It's lovely. Makes me feel like home. So big shout out to German mum. She's fantastic. Having a great time. Thanks a lot to Boutique Amp Distribution. Thanks a lot to Line 6. Thanks a lot to the guys at Face for supplying me with the gear today. And thank you guys for watching. So stay tuned for more videos. Bye for now.